Welcome. I'm Dr. Les with the University of Kentucky Beef Group. With me today is Kevin Laurent. Kevin is a beef extension specialist down at the Princeton Research Station for the University of Kentucky. Kevin is our one of our marketing experts and certainly the person in our group that has the most experience finding cattle and figuring out how to get feeders rolling. How do I buy heifers?
Well, it's definitely a process, and if you've never done it before, yeah, it can be a little bit daunting task there. The biggest thing I think, number one, is you got to be clear on what you want to buy. What are you going after? And what I mean by that, in this case, I'm going to stick specifically to heifers that can be used for bred heifers to be turned into potential cows that would be attractive for someone to buy as a replacement heifer at a premium, because that's how we're going to try to make this thing more profitable. And quality is the key. And I can't stress that enough. If you think you're just going to run down to the stockyard and buy the first big set of heifers that seems to look okay that run through the ring and turn those into bred heifers, it's not that simple. So quality is the key. You got to make sure they're the right kind, that they're at least number 1 and 2, large and medium frame number 1s and 2s. We're going to look at a market report, I think, in a few minutes and kind of show you some examples. They don't need to have any blemishes, bad eyes, no short tails, short ears, humpbacks. They need to look good. They need to be feminine. I mean, they need to look like heifers. They need to have some volume and substance to them. And then, it really, really helps if you know the source and know that they've never been implanted, because then you can, if they've never been implanted, you'll have a better chance of them, being reproductively sound, and you're going to lose some of them. So if you buy 30 heifers, you may only get 25 or 20 to 25 goes through all the process and makes it to a bred heifer stage. So there's some hoops for these heifers to jump through, whether it be pelvic area, and we'll get to all that in later episodes. But, you need to start with good quality. Another thing is, and I can't stress this enough, is disposition. They need to be calm heifers that are easy to work with, heifers you can walk through, and it won't be that way you won't limit your buyers. We've had several years of with the West Kentucky Select Bred Heifer sale, and disposition probably will hurt a producer's heifers that come in the ring more than anything. If when we're selling those heifers there at Guthrie, if a pen of heifers come in and they never stop stirring the pot, I call it, and just spinning in the ring and never just stop and calm and stand there during the sale process, you can knock 200-300 off a head when they act nervous and whatnot in the ring. And so that disposition's huge. Nobody wants to buy a problem. So that's quality is key. Quality is key. Now, if you want, I can go through some options. Mainly, I think we've got 3 main options on sources and where to get them.
I mean, we're pretending like we don't have a clue on how to get it. So let's go through those options.
Okay. All right. The first obvious thing is go to the stockyard. You just go to the stockyard. There's, Kentucky is blessed with many stockyards. That's a good thing. We've got a great cattle marketing infrastructure. You can go to your local stockyard, show up, see something you think you like, a set of heifers come in, and raise your hand and try to buy them. Now, you could get something bought maybe that day, but there's a thing about going to the stockyard. First off, if you've never been, you may have bought things at an auction before, but if you've never been and nobody knows you around that stockyard and you show up and all of a sudden you're going to buy 30 or 40 heifers, the regulars there are going to kind of look at you and see where, wonder where you came from and what's, who is this person? It's kind of a club. I mean, I must be honest with you. And so you either are not going to buy anything, they're not going to let you have anything, or you're going to pay dearly for them. They're going to make you earn them. Right? So it's, and I may be over exaggerating that to a certain extent, but there's a little truth to that. Plus, you don't know what you're really buying a lot of times. And And so, and I'm not trying to be negative on our stockyards. I'm all for it. Our stockyards are one of the best things we've got going for us in Kentucky in our cattle industry. It's just the nature of the situation. Now, if you go to a sale where the stockyard is featuring a set of heifers coming from certain sources that are replacement quality, that kind of thing, that's a whole different story. So I'd say if you want to go the stockyard route, don't go the first day and buy. You need to go visit with your stockyard operator, your manager, get to know those folks around there, and before you dive off as a buyer into that deal. They want to know you too, because if they don't know you, they want to make sure your credit's good and your check's going to be good too. So develop that relationship if you want to be your own buyer. The good thing about the stockyard is when the price is discovered. I mean, the weight and the price is right there. That cattle's going to weigh what it says on the scales. Those are certified scales. Everything's on the up and up. Whatever your ending bid is, you bought them for that price and that weight, and it's cut and dry. It's black and white. So and we'll get into how that can get into a gray area if we're trying to buy a private treaty in a minute. So stockyard is that's one option. Another option is kind of stockyards usually, but it'd be going through an order buyer. Our order buyers buy most of their cattle in general at the stockyard. This is something you can explore maybe as you get to know your local stockyard operators and whatnot, is get to know some of the order buyers. Most stockyards have a regular set of order buyers that are there in the seats, every week buying feeder calves and whatnot. And so, a good strategy might be to develop a relationship with one of those order buyers. Let that order buyer do the buying for you. They're professionals. They do it every week, every day. They know what they're doing. The biggest thing is you need to make sure they understand what you want. So have a good discussion with them. Don't just go and say, hey, I want some 5-weight heifers. It's more specific than that. I want 5-weight heifers that are a certain color or a certain breed type. I don't need any bad, bad apples in it as much as you can tell. Just make sure they know what you want. Now, to get that kind of service, you're going to pay for it. So, I mean, it's usually about $1 a hundredweight they're going to charge you. And, every order buyer is different, but you can talk, negotiate that deal. Realize if you're going to an order buyer and you're only wanting 30, 40, 50 heifers and you never used one before, that order buyer is holding orders for larger buyers that they service and deal with on a regular basis. You may not get the priority that particular week, and I'm sure they're going to try to help you and get you a set of calves bought, but realize you are competing with a lot of regular customers of theirs to get their attention, if that makes sense. So I mean, that's another option. You have any questions on the stockyard, or do we want to, obviously a third way to buy them off an individual, but I mean, any questions come to mind from that standpoint, Les?
Yeah, a couple of things, Kevin. Number one, I'm sitting here in central Kentucky. I assume all I got to do to find, if I don't know where the stockyards are, all I got to do is jump on Dr. Google or one of the other search engines, type in livestock sale facilities or livestock stockyards and Bluegrass and Paris and Washington County and all that stuff would just pop up.
I guess you can find about anything on Google, I guess. You could probably Google stockyards in Kentucky, livestock auctions in Kentucky, and I'm sure you'll get some kind of list. I know it might seem redundant, but I'd go to my county extension agent and find out, where do people sell and buy cattle in our area? Not every county has a stockyard. Most stockyards have a region that they service, and there's some overlap, obviously. But I'd start with that county agent and see, let's just use Springfield just because it comes to mind. There's a small town, the Stockyard. You can't help but drive through Springfield and see that there's a stockyard in the middle of Springfield, right? That one's pretty easy. But if you live in a county that doesn't have a stockyard, maybe 2 counties over, where do you go? Do you go to Springfield? Do you go to Lexington? Where do you go?
Right.
Um,
The order buyers go to the stockyards, go to not only the local stockyards, but a lot of them will go to stockyards all over or have representation from stockyards all over. And then they sometimes buy private treaty as well, don't they?
That's right. Sometimes they'll call that buying in the country off the farm. And then, a lot of them do that also. A lot of our order buyers have assembly yards or buying stations, so to speak, at least where these cattle will come to. They may be buying have a different couple buyers at 2 different sales at same day or whatever. Whatever they buy, that night gets trucked over to a yard that they own, assembly yard or gathering point. Some of them are actually doing some background in themselves and growing cattle and also. So, and some don't. Some of them are directly buying, basically going from the stockyard directly to their customers with those cattle. So that's another thing. You're talking about going to a stockyard or an order buyer. Whenever those cattle are bought, you need to be ready to take delivery on them. You get that phone call at 8, 9 o'clock at night and says, "I've got you 40 heifers. Where do you want them?" They're not. They're not.
You better be ready.
You better be ready to unload some heifers, but it might be in the dark. But I mean, those are the kind of things you need to work out with your yard manager and your order buyer, because a lot of times our yards can hold those cattle overnight for you. Let you maybe go get them yourself and truck them in yourself. You may want the order buyer to provide that trucking, to you the next day. I mean, again, those are a lot of, the cliche devils in the details. There's a lot of details to this that you just can't replace without just good communication with whoever's doing the buying for you.
And again, the best source to get contact information. And we had a whole episode on how to use the extension service. But the best source to get that contact information for reliable order buyers is the ag agent in your local office.
Exactly. Get the ag agent to put you in contact with either local order buyers or the stockyards in their region, or maybe one in their town, and then you take it from there, and you go develop those relationships, have some visits with some of those folks, and see where that leads you.
Good. Any other options for buying cattle?
Yeah, actually, I think for this particular case, I think the best option might be the most challenging is to go private treaty. You're buying quality heifers and you need a history. And again, this is not a criticism of our stockyards. The stockyards are handling thousands of head a lot of times, especially during big runs. They can't necessarily represent every cut of cattle specifically for exactly what's the history of those calves. I mean, it's impossible for them to do. So going private treaty, you're dealing with the person who hopefully raised that heifer on the farm. That heifer was born on their farm. And so from that standpoint, you can visit with them. You can look at the cow herd, look at the udders on the cows. I mean, if you want to get into that kind of detail, which would be smart, you can see what the disposition of these cattle are. It's hard to judge disposition when they run 10 or 15 calves in a sale ring, a sale barn. That's a tough place to try to figure that out. So, you can get on that farm, spend some time. It's not a high pressure situation where you got to make a split decision right away. Do I bid or do I not? And I think it's the best way to do it. Now, that said, it has some challenges. First off, you got to find those individuals. Again, extension could be your best source. Talk to your county agent. Who are the good cattlemen in my county? Who has reputation cattle in my county? Get some names, and go from there. And then the other challenge is just how do you determine a fair price? How do we arrive at a price and a value for these calves? They're not being handled by a third-party agent like the stockyard. They're not being weighed on a certified scale necessarily. So those are all things we need to figure out is what are we going to pay for in that situation? And are we going to be able to pick? If that cattleman has 50 heifers, can you go in and sort 30 off of them? Are you going to have to take the gate cut? Or you going to have to take the heavy 3-weight heifer along with the heavy 5-weight heifer? You got to take his whole heifer crop. What are you know, those are, again, details that you got to work out.
Well, I mean, the situation with the hill farm that we're going to buy around 30 heifers. Not super easy to find a single farmer that's got 30 heifers that we can buy right off the farm. I mean, if you just do the math, you know, if you got 30 heifers, you probably we're saving some yourself, right? So let's say maybe you save 15, they save 15. So that's 45 heifers, and half the calf crop was steers. So there was 45 steers to go with that. Okay. And maybe there was a 10% of the mama cows didn't get pregnant. So you're looking at a farmer that's got 100 to 120 mama cows and is willing to sell you the bottom end of his calf crop, and the bottom end of his heifer calf crop need to be good enough that you can develop and make heifers out of. And honestly, you know, if you don't want to get the true bottom end, there's probably got to be 200 to 250 mama cows on a farm, right? On a farm.
No, you're exactly right. And it's funny you say that because, yeah, every time you go or you're up to, in a perfect situation, maybe 80 cows, and you know that's not going to happen. So, yeah, now 120. Yeah, honestly, probably needs to be 150, 200 cow type herds if you're looking for 30 quality heifers, because honestly, it's almost in thirds. The top third is going to stay at that farm, more than likely. The middle third is where you want to be. And that bottom third, you probably don't really want them, because half of that bottom third will probably be problems that don't make it through all the process anyway. Whether it be small pelvises, they don't grow out, they didn't get enough colostrum for whatever reason when they were born. I mean, all that stuff rears its ugly head once you own them, you know. And so, so you're looking at your above average producers, numbers wise, size wise. Yeah,
if you're trying to buy that many cattle, I mean, the average cow herd size in Kentucky is 26. So correct. Unless you went, you know, you personally went to 10 different farms and bought all their middle cut heifers and had them all trucked to your farm. I mean, finding 30 single source heifers is going to be kind of tough.
Yeah. And see, that's why we have stockyards. You know, that what you just described is why we have stockyards, because stockyards are the assembly point to gather and get all these different cuts of cattle into like classes, whether we're dealing with feeder steers or feeder heifers, whatever. So, yeah, good point.
So when you were talking about kind, okay, kind is kind of an industry slang, right?
Right.
But we do have a type of heifer and a kind of heifer, and you talked about the reputation of the producer. So are you talking about just what they look like? You know, are they tall? Are they short? Are they fat? Are they thin? How they were managed? You know, have they had their vaccine? What all are you talking about when you talk about type and kind?
Yeah, and that's a tough question to actually. I guess this is where we need to show pictures. You know, have a little primer on judging, I guess, but it's all of the above. Everything you just listed. I mean, type and kind. You want cattle that have some, I would say, volume, got some body depth to them. You need some substance. You need some volume, and then they need to, you know, they need to look good. They need to be pleasing to look at. You brought up a vaccination program. That's something I don't even have on my little cheat sheet here to go on, and that's something we need to talk about. has anything been done to these calves? You know, in terms of, you know, we didn't want them implanted, that's fine, but we also want them to have we do want them to have some other management tools, such as having some vaccinations. Were they calf foot vaccinated for black leg? Have they had any vaccinations? Are they weaned? You know, are they introduced creek feeder toward the end? You know, some people start introducing calves to a creek feeder a little bit, or some creek feed before weaning. How hard are you going to bring in a balling calf, a calf that's just being removed from its mom? Have you ever done that before? Do you have the right facility to have that? Do you have the right fences to deal with that? That's huge. So those are things you need to
certainly if you're a new cattleman or a new, you know, feeder like what this guy is, you probably ought to not go with high risk cattle.
No,
high risk meaning
high risk cattle. And that means high risk can cover a lot of areas. High risk can not only mean high risk from a health standpoint. We normally talk about high risk being commingled calves that are just being pulled off the cow, being mixed and commingled at the stockyard, and then, you know, maybe taking 2 days away from water, and then we get them and we got to get them and keep them healthy. High risk in this situation may be as simple as balling calves coming from a good producer, coming to your pen that you think you have a good cattle pen that the calves can crawl through and get out. And let me tell you something, when balling calves get out, they're searching for mama. They don't know who you, they don't know that associate you with good feed and good, you know, you're not their friend. They're looking for mama. So they will scatter like quail. And I'm speaking from experience. I can't stress that enough. I don't want to go into my sad, sorry story, but it can be ugly. So you definitely want, if you're going to take in fresh weaned balling calves, you better have a good pen. And I don't suggest that for a first timer at all. Not at all.
So as just to kind of summarize what we've talked about, if we're going to go private treaty, we need the right physical appearance of the cattle. They need to have some depth and width and the right height and the right size and weight. They need to be vaccinated at least once, but preferably twice. They need to have been dewormed, need to be great disposition cattle, and preferably weaned at least 30 days and bump broke, right?
Yeah, no, I agree.
If we want low
risk, great outcome kind of potential, and that's things we can get into, I think, down the road. So.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, thanks for your time.
You bet.
Just a phenomenal discussion on how to find heifers. And if you have any questions, if you're a listener, if you have any questions, contact your local ag agent. Start communication with your local extension office, because it's your key to unbiased, reliable information. And otherwise, thanks for tuning in to this episode of I Bought a Farm. Now what?